The silver fork in my hand trembled just a fraction, but enough to make the pasta sauce splatter onto the white tablecloth. It wasn't the air conditioning that made me shiver. It was the sudden, suffocating silence that had fallen over the entire restaurant. I didn't need to turn around to know who was standing behind me. I could smell him. That sharp, expensive scent of sandalwood and cold rain that I had spent the last 2 years inhaling every time I walked into his office. The air in the room felt heavier, charged with a static electricity that made the fine hairs on my arms stand up. Across from me, Michael stopped chewing. His eyes, usually warm and friendly, widened in confusion as they drifted over my shoulder. He started to stand up, his napkin falling to his lap. "Can I help you?" Michael asked, his voice polite but uncertain. A large, perfectly manicured hand reached past my shoulder and gripped the edge of our table. The knuckles were white. "Sit," a voice commanded. It wasn't loud. It wasn't a shout. It was a low, vibrating baritone that sounded like a growl wrapped in velvet. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it might crack the bone. I slowly turned my head. Kang-dae was looming over us. He looked immaculate as always. His black suit was tailored to perfection, hugging his broad shoulders, and his dark hair was swept back, revealing the sharp, terrifying angles of his face. But his eyes, usually they were cold, indifferent pools of ink. Tonight they were burning. They were wild, frantic, and fixed entirely on Michael. "Mr. Kang," I managed to whisper, my throat dry. "What are you doing here?" He ignored me. He didn't even look at me. His gaze was a weapon, and it was pointed straight at my date. "I asked you a question," Kang said to Michael, his voice dropping an octave lower. "Who are you? Before we find out just how dangerous this night is about to get. And trust me, it gets messy. Make sure you smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You do not want to miss how this disaster unfolds. Like the video if you've ever had a boss who didn't know boundaries." Okay, back to the nightmare. Michael, bless his heart, tried to smile. He was a marketing manager, used to dealing with difficult clients, but he had no idea he was sitting across from the most feared man in Seoul's underworld. "I'm Michael," he said, extending a hand. "I'm a friend of Elizabeth's. We're just having dinner." "And you are?" Kang stared at the outstretched hand like it was covered in filth. He didn't take it. Instead, he stepped closer, invading our personal space until his shadow swallowed the entire table. "A friend," Kang repeated, testing the word like it tasted like poison. "Just a friend." "We're on a date," Michael corrected, his smile faltering. "Look, man, if you know Elizabeth." "I know her," Kang interrupted, his voice rising, cracking with a raw intensity that terrified me. "I know her better than you ever will. I know she doesn't eat mushrooms. I know she hates red wine because it gives her a headache. I know she checks her watch when she's bored." He slammed his hand onto the table, making the silverware jump. "And she has checked her watch 3 times in the last 10 minutes. The entire restaurant was watching now. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. My face felt hot, the blood rushing to my cheeks. Being a black woman in South Korea already drew enough attention. But causing a scene with Kang-dae? That was a death sentence for my social life and my career. "Mr. Kang, please," I hissed, standing up. I smoothed down my dress, trying to regain some shred of dignity. "You are making a scene. You need to leave." Finally, he looked at me. The fury in his eyes didn't vanish, but it shifted. It softened into something desperate and pained. He looked me up and down, taking in the way my long black braids were styled, the emerald green dress I had saved for a special occasion. His jaw clenched tight, a muscle ticking in his cheek. "Leave?" he echoed, sounding almost wounded. "You want me to leave you with him?" "Yes," I said, my voice shaking. "I am off the clock. This is my private life." "Your private life is my concern," he shot back, his composure slipping. "You belong to my world, Elizabeth. You can't just pretend to be normal with some civilian." Michael stood up then, protective instincts kicking in. "Okay, buddy, that's enough. You're scaring her. I think you need to go before I call security." Kang let out a dark, dry laugh. It was a terrifying sound. He snapped his fingers and instantly, Four men in dark suits materialized from the shadows of the restaurant entrance. They didn't draw weapons, they didn't have to. Their presence alone sucked the oxygen out of the room. Michael froze. He looked at the men, then at Kang, and the realization finally hit him. This wasn't just a jealous ex or a rude boss. This was danger. I think, Kang whispered, leaning into Michael's face, that you are the one who will be leaving. Now. I couldn't let this happen. I couldn't let Michael get hurt because my boss was having a psychotic break. I grabbed my purse. I'm leaving, I announced, grabbing Michael's arm. Michael, let's go. I am so sorry about this. Kang stepped in front of me, blocking my path. He didn't touch me, but his body was a solid wall of heat and tension. You aren't going anywhere with him. Watch me, I challenged, though my knees were knocking together. Kang stared at me for a long, agonizing moment. Then he stepped aside. Fine. Go. But this conversation isn't over. I didn't look back. I practically dragged Michael out of the restaurant, my heart racing so fast I felt dizzy. We didn't speak until we were 2 blocks away, standing under the harsh light of a convenience store sign. Elizabeth, Michael said, breathless. Who the hell was that? My boss, I said, covering my face with my hands. I am so sorry, Michael. That wasn't a boss, Liz, Michael said, shaking his head. He looked pale. That guy looked like he wanted to murder me. Look, you're great, but I can't be involved in whatever that was. He hailed a taxi and left me standing there on the sidewalk alone. The date was ruined. My potential relationship was dead before it started. And the most dangerous man in the city was apparently stalking me. I didn't sleep at all that weekend. I sat in my small apartment staring at my phone, waiting for a text, a call, a firing notice. Nothing came. The silence was worse than the shouting. By Monday morning I was a wreck. I concealed the dark circles under my eyes with concealer, pulled my hair back into a severe bun, and put on my most professional blazer. I walked into the mirrored skyscraper of Kang Industries at 8 a.m. sharp. I made his coffee black, 2 ice cubes exactly how he liked it, and marched toward his office. My hand hovered over the brass doorknob. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Just do your job, I told myself. Be the perfect assistant. Make him realize he was the one acting crazy. I knocked and entered. Kang was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the gray Seoul skyline. He didn't turn around when I entered. The tension in the room was thick, suffocating. Your coffee, sir, I said, my voice steady. I placed the cup on his mahogany desk. Did you sleep with him? The question was so blunt, so inappropriate it felt like a slap. I froze. Excuse me. Kang turned around. He looked exhausted. His tie was loosened, his top button undone, something I had never seen in 2 years. His eyes were red-rimmed, as if he hadn't slept either. The man from Friday, Kang said, walking toward me. His movement was predatory, slow. Did you take him home? Did he touch you? I felt a flash of anger hot enough to burn through my fear. That is absolutely none of your business. Answer me, he roared, slamming his hand against the wall next to my head. I flinched, backing up until my hips hit the edge of his desk. He was in my space now, crowding me, his breathing ragged. No, I shouted back, finding my voice. No, I didn't sleep with him. He left me on the sidewalk because you terrified him. You ruined my night, you humiliated me, and now you're interrogating me? Who do you think you are? I am the man who keeps you safe. Kang yelled, his voice cracking. I am the man who makes sure no one in this city looks at you the wrong way. I am the man who has spent 2 years trying to keep his distance so that you wouldn't be dragged into my hell, and then you go out with some graphic designer. He was nice. I screamed, tears pricking my eyes. He was normal. I want normal, Kang. I want to go on a date without bodyguards. I want to hold hands without checking for exits. I am 26 years old and I am lonely. The word hung in the air between us. Lonely. Kang's expression crumbled. The anger drained out of him, replaced by a raw, naked agony that took my breath away. He reached out, his hand hovering near my face, trembling. You're lonely, he whispered. You think you're lonely? Elizabeth, I have been watching you for 730 days. I know the sound of your footsteps. I know how you hum when you're focusing. I know that you miss your mother's cooking. I have been burning alive every single day, trying not to touch you, trying not to claim you. My breath hitched. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm jealous, he rasped, stepping closer until his chest brushed against mine. I'm saying that when I saw him smiling at you, I wanted to tear the world apart. I'm saying that I can't be your boss anymore. I can't just watch you from behind a desk. My heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This was wrong. He was dangerous. He was everything I should run away from. But looking into his dark eyes, seeing the vulnerability there, I couldn't move. You're crazy, I whispered, but there was no venom in it. I am, he agreed, his gaze dropping to my lips. I am absolutely insane over you. Tell me to stop. Tell me to fire you and send you back to South Africa. Tell me to leave right now, Elizabeth, and I will. He waited. The silence stretched, heavy and electric. All I had to do was say the word. Go. Stop. But my body betrayed me. My hand moved on its own, reaching up to touch the lapel of his suit. And if I don't want you to stop? I breathed. Kang didn't hesitate. He groaned, a low sound of defeat and desire, and crashed his mouth onto mine. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a collision. It was 2 years of suppressed longing and frustration exploding all at once. His hands tangled in my hair, pulling my head back, deepening the kiss until I was dizzy, clinging to his shoulders just to stay upright. He tasted like coffee in desperation. He lifted me effortlessly, setting me onto the edge of his desk, knocking over a stack of files. I didn't care. I wrapped my legs around his waist, pulling him closer, needing to feel that he was real. For a man who was usually so controlled, so icy, he was burning hot. We broke apart, gasping for air, foreheads resting against each other. My lips felt swollen, my pulse racing in my ears. This is a bad idea, I whispered, eyes closed. The worst, he agreed, his thumb stroking my cheekbones. But I'm done pretending. You're mine, Elizabeth. I don't care about the rules anymore. I don't care about the danger. I'm not letting anyone else have you. I opened my eyes and looked at him. The scary mafia boss was gone. In his place was just a man terrifyingly in love. And God help me, I realized I had been waiting for this too. Okay, I said softly. Okay. A small smile touched his lips. A genuine one, rare and beautiful. Okay. But of course nothing is ever that simple. We thought we could hide it. We thought we could keep our little bubble safe within the glass walls of his office. We were wrong. The next 2 weeks were a blur of secret touches and stolen glances. By day I was still Ms. Brown, the efficient assistant. I scheduled his meetings, I took his calls, I organized his files. But the dynamic had shifted. When I handed him a file, his fingers would linger on mine a second too long. When he called me into his office, he would lock the door and steal a kiss that made my toes curl before getting back to business. I saw a side of him no one else knew. One rainy Tuesday night he showed up at my apartment. My building wasn't in the best part of Seoul. It was what I could afford on my salary before the overtime kicked in. I opened the door in my oversized t-shirt and bonnet, holding a wooden spoon. Kang? I asked, eyeing the 2 bodyguards stationed at the end of the hallway. What are you doing here? He held up a plastic bag. I heard you say you missed home. I stepped back to let him in. He looked ridiculously out of place in my tiny, colorful living room with his Italian suit and polished shoes. He set the bag on my small kitchen counter and started unpacking. What is this? I asked, peering into the containers. I did some research, he said, looking uncharacteristically shy. I found a place in Itaewon that specializes in South African cuisine. It's bobo Thai and malva pudding. I stared at him, my throat tightening. You brought me bobo Thai? I don't know if it's authentic, he muttered, loosening his tie. But I wanted to try. I took a bite. It wasn't exactly like my mother's. It was a little too sweet, not spicy enough, but the gesture made my heart ache. I looked at this powerful man, who could order a hit on someone with a phone call, standing in my cramped kitchen hoping he bought the right casserole. It's perfect, I said, and I meant it. He relaxed, his shoulders dropping. Good. Because I also bought ingredients. I want you to teach me how to make it properly. You want to cook? I laughed. Kang-dae, you probably have people to peel your grapes for you. I want to cook for you, he said seriously. I want to take care of you, Elizabeth. In every way. We spent the evening in the kitchen. I laughed as he struggled to chop onions without crying. His lethal precision useless against vegetable fumes. I taught him how to pronounce the names of the dishes in Kosa, giggling when he butchered the clicks. For a few hours the mafia, the danger, the secrets, it all faded away. It was just us. But shadows have a way of creeping back in when you least expect them. A week later Kang dropped a bomb on me. We were in the back seat of his car, his hand resting possessively on my knee as the city lights blurred past. There is a charity gala on Friday, he said, staring straight ahead. The annual Soul of Seoul fundraiser. Everyone will be there. Politicians, business partners, rivals. Okay, I said, pulling out my tablet. I'll make sure your suit is pressed and arrange for your driver. No, he said, turning to look at me. I don't want you to arrange the driver. I want you to be in the car with me. I paused. I am in the car with you. As my date, he clarified. Not my assistant. My stomach dropped. Kang, that's public. That's very public. Cameras, press, enemies. I am tired of hiding, he said, gripping my hand. I hate watching you walk 2 steps behind me. I hate introducing you as Miss Brown. I want the world to know. But is it safe? I asked, the fear creeping back in. You told me once that anyone close to you becomes a target. His face darkened. I have tripled your security details. There is a guard outside your building, one at the lobby, and one who follows you to the subway. I would burn this city to ash before I let anyone touch a hair on your head. Trust me. I looked into his eyes, those intense dark eyes that had watched me for 2 years. I loved him. I realized it then fully and completely, and if I loved him, I had to accept his world. Okay, I whispered. Let's go to the gala. If only I knew that saying yes to that party was like pulling the pin on a grenade. The night of the gala arrived. Kang had sent a dress. A stunning floor-length gown in deep gold silk that looked incredible against my dark skin. When I walked out of my bedroom, Kang actually stopped breathing for a second. Wow, he breathed, looking me over. You are magnificent. We arrived at the hotel ballroom. As soon as we stepped out of the car, the flashbulbs blinded me. Click, click, click. The noise was deafening. Kang wrapped his arm around my waist, pulling me tight against his side. It was a claim. A statement. We walked the red carpet, and I could hear the whispers. Who is she? Is that the assistant? Why is she with him? I held my head high, squeezing Kang's hand. We entered the ballroom. A glittering world of wealth and power. For the first hour it was magical. Kang introduced me to people, not as his employee but as Elizabeth. We danced and he held me like I was the only person in the room. But then the atmosphere shifted. I needed to use the restroom. I'll be right back, I told him. I'll have a guard escort you, he said instantly. Kang, it's the ladies' room. It's 10 feet away. I'll be fine. I squeezed his arm and slipped away before he could argue. I washed my hands, staring at myself in the mirror. I looked happy, radiant. I turned to leave, pushing open the restroom door. The hallway was empty. Too empty. I took 2 steps toward the ballroom, my heels clicking on the marble. Suddenly, a hand clamped over my mouth. A rough arm banded across my chest, dragging me backward into a service alcove. I tried to scream, but the sound was smothered against a leather glove. Quiet. A voice hissed in my ear. It wasn't Korean. It was English with a thick, jagged accent. Make a sound and I break your neck. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded my veins. I kicked out, my heel connecting with a shin, but the man didn't even flinch. He spun me around, slamming me against the wall. He was huge. A scar ran down the side of his face. He wasn't one of Kang's men. So, the man sneered, leaning in close. You are the weakness. Kang Min-suk finally got himself a pet. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. This was the danger Kang had warned me about. Let me go, I gasped, my voice trembling. Not yet, the man smiled, pulling a knife from his jacket. The blade glinted under the hallway lights. First, we are going to send a little message to your boyfriend. Tell him the West District sends their regards. He raised the knife. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for the pain. Bam! The pressure on my chest vanished. I heard a sickening crunch, a groan, and the sound of a body hitting the floor. I opened my eyes. The man was on the ground, unconscious. Standing over him, breathing hard, was a woman in a shimmering evening gown. She looked like a guest, but the way she held herself loose, ready to strike, screamed soldier. It was one of the security team. She had been undercover. Miss Brown, she said calmly, adjusting her diamond bracelet. Are you injured? I couldn't speak. I just shook my head. Good. Mr. Kang is on his way. And then he was there. Running. I had never seen Kang run before. He rounded the corner, his face pale as a sheet, his eyes wild with terror. When he saw me, he practically collapsed with relief. Elizabeth. He grabbed me, pulling me into his arms so hard it hurt. He was shaking. The invincible mafia boss was trembling like a leaf. I'm sorry. He gasped into my hair. I'm so sorry. I looked away for 1 second. I thought. I'm okay, I sobbed, clutching his jacket. I'm okay. He pulled back, gripping my face between his hands. His eyes were dark voids of fury now. He looked down at the unconscious man on the floor, and the look on his face made my blood run cold. It was a look of pure, unadulterated violence. Take her to the car, he ordered the female guard, his voice void of all emotion. Get her to the penthouse. Lockdown protocol. Kang, I cried, grabbing his sleeve. Where are you going? He gently removed my hand from his arm. He kissed my forehead tenderly, softly. But when he looked at me, his eyes were dead. I have business to finish, he said. Go. The penthouse was silent. Not the peaceful silence of a library, but the heavy, oppressive silence of a vault. I sat on the edge of a leather sofa that probably cost more than my parents' house back in Cape Town. My knees pulled up to my chest. My hands were still shaking. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the glint of that knife. I felt the rough leather of the glove over my mouth. The female guard, her name was Minji, I learned, stood by the door like a statue. She hadn't blinked in an hour. Is he okay? I asked, my voice small in the vast room. Mr. Kang can take care of himself, she said, her tone professional but not unkind. You should rest, Miss Brown. Rest? How could I rest? My boyfriend had just walked off to finish business, which in his world likely meant someone wasn't waking up tomorrow. I stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows. Seoul glittered below us, a sea of neon and darkness, beautiful and terrifying. It was nearly 3 a.m. when the elevator dinged. I shot up from the couch. The doors slid open and Kang stepped out. He had showered. His hair was damp and he was wearing fresh clothes, sweatpants and a dark t-shirt. But I could see the exhaustion etched into the lines of his face. He looked 10 years older than he had this morning. Elizabeth, he said, stopping in the entryway. He didn't come closer. He looked at me like I was something fragile that he had already broken. You're still awake. You left me, I said, my voice cracking. You sent me here and you left. I had to ensure the threat was neutralized, he said, using that cold, corporate voice he used in board meetings. It is done. The West District will not bother us again. Us. I let out a shaky laugh. Kang. A man tried to stab me in a hallway because I'm dating you. He flinched. The mask slipped just for a second, revealing raw pain. I know. Which is why I have made arrangements. There is a flight to Johannesburg at 10 a.m. My private jet is fueled. You will have a security detail escort you to your parents' home, and I have wired $5 million into an account in your name. You never have to work again. I stared at him. The air left my lungs. Excuse me. You're leaving, he said, walking to the wet bar and pouring himself a drink. His hands were steady, but his knuckles were white. It was a mistake to bring you into this. I was selfish. I wanted you, so I took you, and I almost got you killed. I won't let it happen again. He downed the amber liquid in one swallow and turned his back to me. Pack your things, Elizabeth. You're going home. For a moment I just looked at his broad back. I thought about the knife. I thought about the fear. It would be so easy to say yes. To get on that plane, go back to South Africa, eat my mom's cooking, and forget I ever met the dangerous Kang-dae. But then I thought about the way he had looked at me in the office when he confessed. I thought about him clumsily trying to cook bobo tie. I thought about how his hand shook when he touched my face. I walked across the room. I didn't stop until I was right behind him. No, I said. Kang stiffened. It wasn't a request. I don't care, I said, grabbing his arm and spinning him around. You don't get to decide for me. You don't get to make me fall in love with you and then ship me off like a package because things got hard. Things didn't get hard, Elizabeth, he shouted, slamming the glass down on the counter. You almost died. Next time Minji might be 2 seconds too late. Next time they might use a gun. I cannot live with that. I cannot watch you bleed because of my sins. Then we deal with it, I yelled back, stepping into his space. I poked him hard in the chest. We figure it out. But I am not leaving. I am South African Kang. We are made of stronger stuff than you think. You think a little scare is going to make me run? He stared at me, his chest heaving. A little scare? He had a knife to your throat. And you saved me, I said, dropping my voice to a whisper. I reached up and cupped his face. His skin was cold. You saved me. I love you, Kang-dae. And I am not going anywhere. Unless you tell me right now, looking me in the eye, that you don't love me. He looked at me. He looked at me for a long, agonizing minute. I could see the war waging behind his eyes, the instinct to protect me fighting against the desperate need to keep me. With a ragged groan, he collapsed forward, burying his face in the crook of my neck. His arms wrapped around my waist, lifting me off the floor as he held on for dear life. I can't, he muffled against my skin. I can't tell you that. God, I love you so much it hurts. I held him as he shook, running my fingers through his damp hair. I know. I've got you. We're in this together. That night, we didn't sleep in the guest room. He carried me to his massive master bed, and we slept tangled together, his arm thrown over me like a seatbelt, as if he was afraid I would vanish if he let go. That was how I moved in. No discussion, no moving trucks. Just me, him, and a lot of security. Living with a mafia boss was different. I saw him at his worst. I saw the nights he came home with bruised knuckles and dead eyes, smelling of smoke and violence. On those nights he wouldn't touch me. He would shower for an hour, scrubbing his skin until it was red, and then sleep on the far side of the bed. But I also saw him at his best. I learned that he was secretly a nerd for history documentaries. We would spend Sunday afternoons curled up on the couch, watching shows about the Roman Empire while I braided my hair. He was fascinated by the process. He would watch me part my hair, apply the oil, and weave the braids with a level of focus usually reserved for hostile takeovers. It is architectural, he said once, touching a fresh braid. Beautiful. I learned that he hated mornings. The terrifying Kang-dae, the scourge of Seoul, was a grumbling mess until he had his coffee. I took over the kitchen, much to the chef's dismay. I filled his sleek, sterile penthouse with the smell of spices. I made chakalaka that was so spicy it made him sweat, but he ate every bite because I made it. You are trying to kill me, he wheezed, reaching for water. It puts hair on your chest, I laughed, wiping a drop of sauce from his lip. I have enough hair on my chest, he grumbled, but he was smiling. 6 months passed. 6 months of hiding in plain sight. I still worked at the company, but my role had shifted. I was officially a consultant now, which mostly meant I kept Kang sane. The public scrutiny had died down, mostly because Kang had sued half the tabloids in the country into bankruptcy. One Tuesday evening, I was sitting in the home office going over some legitimate contracts. Kang was trying to move more of his business above ground for my sake when he walked in. He was wearing a tuxedo. I looked up from my laptop, blinking. I was wearing leggings and one of his oversized hoodies. Did I miss a memo? Is there another gala? No, Kang said. He looked nervous. He was tugging at his cuffs, adjusting his tie. I hadn't seen him this jittery since the night he confessed. Get changed. Put on something nice. We are going out for dinner. Kang, it's Tuesday. I'm tired. Can't we just order in? Please, he said. And the way he said it, soft, pleading, made me close my laptop immediately. Okay. Give me 20 minutes. I put on a simple black dress, sleek and elegant, and let my hair down. When I walked out, he didn't say anything, but he took my hand and kissed the back of it, his lips lingering against my skin. We got into the car. The partition was up. We drove in silence, but his hand never left mine. His palm was clammy. Kang, I said softly. Is everything okay? Is it the business? Is someone threatening us? No, he said quickly. Too quickly. No threats. Everything is safe. Then why do you look like you're about to throw up? He let out a short, nervous laugh. Is it that obvious? You're squeezing my hand so hard I'm losing circulation. He immediately loosened his grip. Sorry. Tonight is important. The car slowed down. I looked out the window and gasped. We were parked in front of the Italian restaurant. The restaurant. The one where he had crashed my date with Michael all those months ago. Here. I asked, turning to him. You want to eat here? Trust me, he said. We walked inside. The restaurant was empty. Not just quiet, completely empty. No other diners. Just the staff standing in a line, looking terrified and respectful. Did you rent out the whole place? I whispered as the host led us to a table in the center of the room. Something like that, Kang mumbled. We sat down. It was the exact same table. I looked at the chair where Michael had sat, and a bubble of laughter escaped my throat. You know, I said, picking up the menu. The last time I was here, a maniac threatened my date and almost got the police called on him. Kang winced. He reached across the table and took my hand again. I was an idiot. You were a psychopath, I corrected gently. A jealous psychopath, he agreed. I looked at you that night sitting there with that civilian, and I felt like my heart was being ripped out of my chest. I wanted to burn the city down. I'm glad you didn't, I said. I like this city. The waiter brought white wine because he remembered red gave me a headache, and our appetizers. We ate, but Kang barely touched his food. He kept checking his pocket. He kept shifting in his seat. My heart started to race. I knew that look. I knew that energy. Elizabeth, he said suddenly, pushing his plate away. Yes. These last 6 months, he started, his voice thick with emotion. They have been the best months of my life. Before you, I was just surviving. I was building an empire of dust. I had money, I had power, but I came home to an empty house and a cold bed. He stood up. My fork clattered onto my plate. He walked around the table. He didn't look like the mafia boss now. He looked like a boy. He looked terrified. You changed everything, he said, standing in front of me. You make me want to be better. You make me want to leave the darkness behind. You taught me how to cook terrible food. Hey, I laughed, tears springing to my eyes. And you taught me how to love, he finished. You are my conscience, Elizabeth. You are my heart. You are the only person in this world who sees me, the real me, and doesn't run away. He took a deep breath and then he dropped to one knee. My hands flew to my mouth. Kang. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small black velvet box. He opened it. Inside sat a diamond so big it was almost obscene, surrounded by smaller emeralds that matched the dress I had worn on our first real date. I bought this restaurant, he said, his eyes locked on mine. I bought it because this is where I almost lost you, and I wanted to make it the place where I keep you forever. A tear slid down my cheek. You bought the restaurant? I'm a possessive man, he shrugged, a watery smile on his face. Elizabeth Brown, will you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Will you marry me and let me spend the rest of my life making up for the fact that I crashed your date? I couldn't speak. I nodded frantically, sliding off my chair to kneel on the floor with him. Yes, I choked out. Yes, you crazy man. Yes. He slid the ring onto my finger. Fit perfectly. Of course it did. He probably had my ring size investigated by his intelligence team. He pulled me into a kiss that tasted like wine and victory. The staff, who had been hiding in the kitchen, burst into applause. I buried my face in his neck, laughing and crying at the same time. I love you, he whispered against my ear. I'm going to give you everything, Elizabeth. A family, a future, safety. I know, I whispered back. But life, as I was learning, loves a plot twist. We got married 3 months later. It was a small private ceremony on a private island in Jeju. My parents flew in, and my dad spent the whole time eyeing Kang suspiciously, even after Kang bought him a luxury sedan. My mom, on the other hand, was charmed instantly. The honeymoon was in Bali. 2 weeks of sun, sand, and no bodyguards in sight. Well, none that I could see, though I knew they were lurking in the palm trees. We came back to Seoul, and life settled into a beautiful rhythm. Kang was true to his word. He was selling off the illegal parts of his business, transitioning into real estate and tech. It was dangerous work, cutting ties with the underworld, but he did it. Then, about 4 months after the wedding, I started feeling off. I was tired. All the time. I could sleep for 12 hours and still wake up exhausted. And the smell of kimchi, which I usually loved, suddenly made my stomach turn. I was in the bathroom of the penthouse, staring at the little plastic stick on the counter. My hands were shaking again, just like they had the night of the attack. 2 pink lines. Elizabeth. Kang's voice called from the bedroom. Are you okay? You've been in there for a while. I opened the door. He was standing there, loosening his tie after a long day. He looked at me, saw the tears in my eyes, and panic instantly flooded his face. What is it? He demanded, rushing over. Are you hurt? Is it the security? Did someone contact you? No, I whispered. I held up the stick. He stopped. He stared at it. He looked at me, then back at the stick. He blinked, confused. Is that a thermometer? He asked. Do you have a fever? I laughed, a wet choke sound. No, Kang. It's not a thermometer. Realization dawned on him slowly. His eyes went wide. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked at my stomach, then at my face. Pregnant, he whispered. The word sounded foreign in his mouth. We're having a baby, I said, watching him closely. I was terrified. We hadn't talked about kids much. His world was so dangerous. Would he want this? Kang didn't say anything. He just fell to his knees. He wrapped his arms around my waist and pressed his face into my stomach. I could feel his shoulders shaking. Kang, I asked, touching his hair. Are you okay? He looked up and his face was wet with tears. He was beaming. It was a smile so bright it could power the city grid. A baby, he sobbed, laughing. We are having a baby. A little you? Or a little me? Hopefully a little me, I joked. The world can't handle another you. He stood up and spun me around, shouting with joy. I am going to be a father. I have to buy things. I have to build a nursery. I need to hire more security. I need to read books. He was spiraling, but in the best way possible. The next 9 months were a comedy of errors. Kang-dae, the mafia boss, became Kang-dae, the helicopter parent. He wouldn't let me lift anything heavier than a spoon. He hired a private chef to cook whatever weird cravings I had. Once he sent a driver out at 2 a.m. to find peanut butter and spicy pickles because I needed them. He read to my belly every night. He spoke in Korean and broken English, telling the baby about how he built his company, omitting the illegal parts. You will be a king, he whispered to my stomach one night. Or a queen, I corrected, kicking him gently. A queen, he agreed. A queen who will rule us all. When my water broke, Kang panicked. For a man who had lived through gang wars and shootouts, he completely lost his mind. The bag, he yelled, running in circles in the bedroom. Where is the bag? Elizabeth, don't move. Do not move. Breathe. Are you breathing? I am breathing, Kang, I gritted out, gripping the bedpost as a contraction ripped through me. Get the damn bag. We made it to the hospital in record time, mostly because his convoy blocked off 3 lanes of traffic. The nurses were terrified of him. He barked orders at everyone, demanding the best room, the best doctor, the best ice chips. Sir, please sit down, the doctor said tiredly. I will not sit down. Kang roared. My wife is in pain. Do something. Kang, I said, reaching for his hand. Shut up and hold my hand. He shut up. He held my hand. He let me squeeze his fingers until I felt bones shift. He wiped the sweat from my forehead with a tenderness that made the nurses soften. You are doing so well, he whispered, kissing my knuckles. You are a warrior, Elizabeth. My African queen. You are the strongest person I know. And then, after 12 hours of labor, a cry filled the room. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. A high-pitched, angry wail that announced to the world that she was here. And she had opinions. The doctor lifted her up, a tiny wriggling creature covered in fluids, and placed her on my chest. The warmth of her skin against mine was instant grounding. The pain, the exhaustion, the fear. It all evaporated. I looked down at the dark fuzz of hair, the scrunched-up nose that looked exactly like her father's, and the tiny fingers grasping at the air. She's here, I whispered, tears blurring my vision. Kang, she's here. I looked up at my husband. Kang-dae, the man who made grown men tremble with a single glance, was weeping openly. He reached out a trembling finger and stroked the baby's cheek. He looked terrified. He looked like he was holding a bomb, but instead of fear of it exploding, he was afraid he would be the one to break it. She is so small, he choked out, his voice rough. How is she so small? She's perfect, I said, kissing the top of her head. We need a name, Kang said, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand, trying to regain some composure but failing miserably. We cannot just call her the baby. We had argued about names for months. I wanted something South African. He wanted something traditional Korean. We had a list of about 50 names and we agreed on exactly none of them. But looking at her now, looking at the perfect blend of both of us, the answer seemed obvious. Nabi, I whispered. Kang froze. Nabi. It means butterfly in Korean, I said, smiling tiredly. Because she gave me butterflies the moment I met her father. And it sounds a bit like Naledi, which means star in Sesotho. Kang looked at our daughter. Nabi. He tested the word. The baby settled, her cries turning into soft whimpers. Song Nabi. My little star. My butterfly. He leaned down and kissed my forehead. Then he kissed the baby's head. I promise you, he whispered fiercely to her. I will burn the world down before I let anything hurt you. It was a beautiful promise. But promises made in the safety of a hospital room are hard to keep when the wolves are waiting at the door. We brought Nabi home 3 days later. The penthouse had been transformed. The sharp, modern edges were covered in baby-proofing foam. The gunmetal gray decor was invaded by pastel pinks and yellows. There was a crib in the master bedroom that cost more than a car, and a stack of diapers that reached the ceiling. For the first 3 months we lived in a bubble. A sleep-deprived, milk-stained, blissful bubble. I saw a version of Kang I didn't know existed. The dad version. He was obsessive. He had cameras installed in the nursery that he could check from his phone every 30 seconds. He interviewed 5 nannies and fired them all before hiring Mrs. Park, an elderly woman who had raised 5 sons and wasn't afraid to smack Kang's hand if he held the bottle wrong. Mr. Kang. She would scold him in rapid-fire Korean. Support the head. She is a baby, not a football. And the terrifying mafia boss would apologize and adjust his grip. It was funny. It was sweet. But underneath it all, I could feel the tension humming in him like a live wire. He wasn't sleeping. I would wake up at 3 a.m. to feed Nabi, and his side of the bed would be cold. I would find him in the living room, staring out the window at the city below, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his phone lighting up with messages. Kang? I asked one night, walking out with Nabi in my arms. Coming to bed? He turned, and the look on his face made my blood run cold. It was the face from the restaurant. The face from the gala. Cold. Calculating. Dangerous. It softened instantly when he saw us, but I had seen it. Go to bed, Elizabeth, he said softly. I have some work to finish. You said you were done, I said, walking closer. You said you sold the casinos. You said the loan sharking business was closed. You said we were legitimate. We are, he said, but he turned his phone screen down. But the past has long claws, my love. It doesn't let go just because we want it to. What is happening? I demanded. Is it the West District again? Don't worry about it. I will worry about it. I am holding our daughter Kang. If there is danger, I need to know. He walked over and kissed Nabi's head. There is no danger inside these walls. I made sure of that. Now go to sleep. He was lying. I knew it, but I was too tired to fight him. 2 weeks later, the bubble burst. It was a Sunday. Mrs. Park was off and it was just us. I was in the kitchen making tea, and Kang was in the nursery with Nabi. I could hear him talking to her in that soft, silly voice he only used when no one was listening. Then the talking stopped. It didn't taper off. It cut off abruptly. Then I heard a sound that I never wanted to hear in my home. The sound of a slide racking on a handgun. Click-clack. I dropped the mug. It didn't shatter, it bounced on the rug, but I was already running. Kang! I screamed, bursting into the nursery. Kang was standing over the crib. He had Nabi in one arm, holding her tight against his chest. In his other hand he held his black pistol pointed at the window. Get down, he barked at me. On the floor. Now. I dropped to my knees, crawling toward them. What is it? What happened? The window, he hissed, his eyes scanning the glass. There was a drone. A small one. It hovered right there. It was watching her. A drone. I asked, my heart hammering. Maybe it's just a kid? A hobbyist. At the 45th floor? Kang snapped. No. And it had a red light. Recording. He moved away from the window, backing into the hallway, dragging me with him. He shoved us into the panic room. A hidden room behind the walk-in closet that I hated. It was reinforced steel, stocked with water and canned food. Stay here, he ordered, checking the clip in his gun. Lock the door from the inside. Do not open it unless you hear my voice and I say the code word. The code word is bobo tie, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Bobo tie, he agreed. He kissed me hard and fast. I'm sorry. I thought we were safe. Kang, don't go out there. I have to hunt, he said, and the darkness in his eyes was absolute. Someone looked at my daughter. Now they lose their eyes. He slammed the heavy steel door and the lock clicked. I was alone in the dark with a crying baby. I sat there for 4 hours. 4 hours of rocking Nabi, singing lullabies in Kosa to drown out the silence. My mind was racing. Was he alive? Was there a team of hitmen in our living room? Was this going to be my life forever? Hiding in a steel box while my husband murdered people? Finally, the intercom crackled. Bobo tie. I scrambled to the door and unlocked it. Kang was standing there. He had taken off his jacket. His white shirt was rolled up to the elbows. There was blood on his hands. Not his blood. I didn't scream. I didn't faint. I just looked at him and I felt a strange, cold acceptance settle in my chest. This was the deal. I had married a monster to be safe from the other monsters. Is it done? I asked quietly. The drone pilot was a scout, Kang said, his voice devoid of emotion. He walked past me into the bathroom and turned on the tap. I watched as he scrubbed the red stains from his knuckles. He was working for the Viper, an old rival from Busan. He thinks because I got married and had a baby I have gone soft. He thinks I am vulnerable. He turned off the water and looked at me in the mirror. He thinks he can take what is mine. I walked into the bathroom. I put Nabi in her bassinet in the bedroom and came back. I took a towel and dried his hands. So what do we do? I asked. I have to go to Busan, he said. He wouldn't look at me. I have to go tonight. If I wait, he will send more men. He will send them to the park, to the doctor's office, to your parents' house. I cannot defend against shadows, Elizabeth. I have to go to the source and turn off the lights. You mean kill him, I said. Yes. And if you don't come back? He turned to face me. I will come back. I have a daughter. I have a wife. Death will have to drag me kicking and screaming to hell. And even then I will fight my way out. He went to the closet and pulled out a duffel bag. He started packing. Not suits. Tactical gear. Kevlar vests. Knives. Things I hadn't seen since the first month of our marriage. How long? I asked, leaning against the doorframe, watching my husband transform into a soldier. 2 days, he said. Maybe 3. I am leaving Minji and the entire A-team here. The penthouse is on total lockdown. No one comes in. No one goes out. Not even for diapers. He zipped the bag. He walked over to me and pulled me into a hug. He smelled of soap and copper. I love you, he whispered. Tell Nabi I love her. Tell her yourself when you get back, I said, my voice fierce. Don't you dare say goodbye like it's the end. He managed a small sad smile. Yes, ma'am. He left. The apartment felt huge and empty without him. The next 48 hours were agony. I didn't sleep. I paced the floor with Nabi. I watched the news, terrified I would see a report about a gang war in Busan. Minji sat in the living room, monitoring the security feeds. She was tense too. He is the best, Ms. Brown, she told me when she saw me checking my phone for the 100th time. The Viper is a thug. Mr. Kang is a strategist. Strategies fail, I muttered. On the 3rd night, a storm hit Seoul. Thunder rattled the windows. Nabi was fussy, crying and refusing to sleep. I was walking her up and down the hallway, exhausted, my eyes burning. Then the power went out. The penthouse plunged into darkness. The emergency lights flickered on, dim, eerie red strips along the floor. Minji called out. Stay where you are. Minji shouted from the living room. I heard the sound of weapons being drawn. We have a system failure. The perimeter alarms are offline. My heart stopped. Is it the storm? I yelled back. No, Minji replied, her voice grim. Someone cut the hard line. They are in the building. I ran to the panic room, but as I reached for the handle, I stopped. The keypad was dead. The electronic lock wouldn't engage without power. It was just a metal door now. It wouldn't hold. Bedroom, Minji commanded, appearing in the hallway with a suppressed submachine gun. Get in the bathroom. Lock the door. Get in the tub with the baby. Minji. Go. I ran into the master bathroom. It was marble, heavy, solid. I locked the door. I climbed into the massive bathtub with Nabi, pulling a thick duvet over us. I heard the front door of the penthouse blow open. Not a keycard. An explosion. A breach charge. The sound of gunfire erupted in my living room. It was loud, deafening even through the walls. I clamped my hands over Nabi's ears, curling my body around her, sobbing silently. Please, God. Please. Not like this. I heard shouting. Heavy boots on the hardwood. Glass shattering. Check the rooms, a voice yelled in Korean. Find the woman. The Viper wants her alive. They were coming for me. They were going to use me to get to Kang. I looked around the bathroom for a weapon. A hairbrush. A bottle of perfume. Scissors. I grabbed the grooming scissors from the counter. They were small, sharp. Better than nothing. The handle of the bathroom door jiggled. Locked. A voice grunted from the other side. Kick it, another voice ordered. Bam. The wood splintered. I squeezed Nabi tighter. She started to cry. Baby, the voice laughed. Jackpot. Bam. The door flew open. A man stood there. He was wearing a mask, holding a shotgun. He saw me in the tub. Come here, little princess, he sneered, stepping into the room. I raised the scissors, my hand shaking uncontrollably. Stay back. I swear to God, stay back. He laughed. He reached out to grab me, and then his head disappeared. Red mist sprayed across the white marble tiles. The man crumbled to the floor. Standing behind him in the doorway was a shadow. It was soaking wet. It was covered in blood. It was breathing like a bellows. Kang. He held a silenced pistol in one hand and a knife in the other. He looked like a demon rising from hell. He stepped over the dead body, his boots squelching on the floor. He looked at me. His eyes were wide, frantic. Elizabeth. I dropped the scissors. Kang. He dropped his weapons and fell to his knees beside the tub, reaching for us with bloody hands, then pulling back, afraid to stain us. I'm here, he gasped. I'm here. I caught the next flight. I felt it. I knew he would try to flank me. Is it over? I wept, climbing out of the tub and throwing myself at him, blood and all. Is it over? He wrapped his arms around me, burying his face in my neck. He was shaking so hard his teeth chattered. It's over, he promised. The Viper is dead. His men are dead. It's done. No one else is coming. We sat there on the bathroom floor, amidst the wreckage of our life, holding our crying daughter. We can't stay here, I said, looking at the dead man in my doorway. We can't raise her here, Kang. I can't do this anymore. Kang looked at me. The adrenaline was fading, leaving him looking old and broken. I know, he whispered. I know. We left the penthouse that night. We didn't pack clothes. We didn't pack toys. We took the diaper bag, the passports, and we walked out of that blood-stained apartment and never looked back. We spent the next 6 months in a safe house in the Swiss Alps. It was a fortress disguised as a ski chalet. Snow, silence, and security. Kang was different after the invasion. The playfulness was gone, replaced by a grim, steely determination. He spent 18 hours a day on the phone, on encrypted video calls, dismantling his empire. He didn't just step back, he burned the bridges. He sold the remaining nightclubs. He liquidated the offshore accounts connected to the syndicates. He handed over evidence anonymously. That put 3 of his biggest rivals behind bars for life. He was bleeding his power dry to buy our freedom. One evening, I found him sitting by the fireplace, staring into the flames. Nabi was asleep in my arms. It's done, he said, his voice raspy. What is done? I asked, sitting beside him. Everything. He looked at me, and his eyes were clear for the first time in years. I am no longer the chairman of the shadowy districts. I am just Kang-dae, investor, father, husband. And the danger? There will always be ghosts, he admitted. But the active threats? The vipers? They are gone. We are out, Elizabeth. Truly out. I leaned my head on his shoulder. So where do we go now? Back to Seoul. He shook his head. Seoul has too many memories. Too many ghosts. I was thinking. Maybe somewhere warmer. Somewhere with good wine and terrible drivers. I smiled. Cape Town. He kissed the top of my head. Cape Town. 3 years later. The South African sun was different from the sun in Seoul. It was heavier, golden, baking the earth with a fierce love. I stood on the veranda of our vineyard in Stellenbosch, holding a glass of iced tea. Below me, rows of grapevines stretched out like green ribbons across the valley. It was quiet, peaceful. Mama! Mama, look! I looked down. Nabi, now a chaotic 3-year-old with wild curls and her father's stubborn chin, was running through the sprinklers. She was screaming with joy, soaking wet. Chasing her was Kang-dae, the former mafia boss of Seoul, the man who used to wear Italian suits and carry silenced pistols, was wearing cargo shorts and a t-shirt that said "Best Dad" in bright yellow letters. He was barefoot. He was laughing, his deep, booming laugh echoing off the mountains as he scooped Nabi up and spun her around. "Got you, little butterfly," he roared. "No. Put down. Put down," she shrieked, giggling uncontrollably. He tossed her gently onto the grass and collapsed next to her, pretending to be defeated. She climbed onto his chest, patting his face with muddy hands. I watched them and my chest ached with how full it felt. It hadn't been easy. The transition to a normal life was hard. Kang struggled with the quiet at first. He would pace the perimeter of the vineyard at night, checking locks that didn't need checking. He flinched when cars backfired. But slowly the armor had fallen away. The soil of the vineyard had grounded him. He learned to worry about harvest seasons and rainfall instead of turf wars and police raids. He looked up and saw me watching. He waved, shielding his eyes from the sun. Elizabeth, come down. We are losing the war against the sprinkler. I set my glass down and walked down the stone steps. When I reached them, Kang reached out and pulled me down onto the grass beside him. I smelled the earth, the water, and him. No longer copper and gunpowder, but sunshine and grapes. You look happy, he said, brushing a blade of grass from my hair. I am, I said. I was just thinking. About what? About that night at the restaurant, I said. When you crashed my date with Michael. If you had just let me go, I would probably be married to a graphic designer right now living in a small apartment in Gangnam. Kang scowled playfully. Don't speak of the graphic designer. I still hate him. I laughed. You never even knew him. I knew he wasn't me, Kang said, pulling me closer. And I knew he couldn't love you the way I do. He couldn't burn the world down for you. You promised no more burning, I reminded him. Figuratively, he grinned. I will burn the toast for you. Maybe the bray. Nabi squeezed between us, demanding attention. Papa, up. Up. He lifted her effortlessly, settling her on his hip. He looked at her, then at me, and his expression turned serious, reverent. I never thought I would have this, he whispered. I thought my life would end in a gutter somewhere alone. You saved me, Elizabeth. You walked into my office with your notepad and your braids and your attitude, and you saved my life. We saved each other, I said, kissing his cheek. He stood up, offering me his hand. Come. My mother-in-law is coming for dinner, and if the lamb isn't ready, she will kill me. And she is scarier than any assassin I have ever met. I laughed, taking his hand. That she is. We walked back toward the house, our daughter running ahead of us, chasing butterflies. I looked back one last time at the vineyard, at the life we had built from the ashes of the old one. Sometimes love isn't soft. Sometimes it's a car crash. Sometimes it's a man slamming his hand on a table and demanding to know who you're dating. Sometimes it's hiding in a bathtub with a pair of scissors. It's messy. It's dangerous. It's terrifying. But looking at Kang, watching him chase our daughter up the steps of our home, I knew one thing for sure. I wouldn't trade the danger, the fear, or the chaos for anything. Because it led me here. It led me to him. And that was worth every single battle. Sometimes the person who ruins your date isn't interrupting your life. They're starting it. Maxine, sorry Elizabeth, thought she could keep her life separate from her dangerous boss. Kang thought he could control his feelings. They were both dead wrong. Because love? Real obsessively dangerous love? It doesn't follow the rules. It kicks down the door and demands to be felt. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of a romance, please destroy that like button, subscribe to Stories Pulse and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a jealous boss if he bought you a restaurant? Or would you run for the hills? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.